Donald Trump once threatened to use military force to seize Greenland. He tried pressure, he tried threats, he even tried to buy it. But Greenland didn't bend. Greenland is home to just 57,000 people, yet those 57,000 people stood up to the most powerful country on Earth and said no. When Trump escalated his threats, talking about annexation, military force, and economic pressure, Greenlanders took to the streets. They marched to the U.S. consulate, wearing red hats that read, "Make America Go Away." They chanted, "Greenland is not for sale." And they weren't alone. As Trump tried to bully Greenland and its allies into submission, Canada and France responded with something far more powerful than words: action. On the same day, in the same city, Nuuk, Greenland's capital, 2 flags were raised, sending a clear message to Washington: you cannot have this land. Friday morning in Nuuk, Canada officially opened a permanent Canadian consulate. Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand attended the ceremony, posting online that Canada was strengthening its presence, partnerships, and leadership in the Arctic. Standing beside her was Mary Simon, Canada's Indigenous Governor-General. A Canadian Coast Guard ship docked in the harbor. Dozens of Inuit leaders from across Canada were present. This was not symbolic. This was permanent. That same day, France opened its first ever consulate in Greenland, becoming the first European Union country to do so. French Consul General Jean-Noël Barrot arrived alongside France's ambassador to Denmark. Their message was direct and unmistakable. France fully respects the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark and rejects any idea of American annexation. No ambiguity, no diplomatic hedging. The timing was deliberate. For weeks, Trump had been threatening Greenland, talking about force, tariffs, and coercion. While he threatened, Canada and France planted flags. They didn't send temporary envoys. They opened permanent diplomatic missions with staff, budgets, and long-term commitments. Before this moment, only the United States and Iceland had consulates in Nuuk. Now, Canada and France have joined them. Germany is considering opening one. The Netherlands is exploring options. Sweden is in discussions. Each new consulate is a vote against annexation, a vote for indigenous sovereignty, a vote that NATO allies do not invade or absorb one another. Trump wanted European support for his Greenland ambitions. Instead, he got unified opposition. He tried to isolate Denmark and ended up isolating the United States. This is the story of how threatening your allies turned into the fastest diplomatic defeat of Trump's presidency. How 57,000 people stood their ground, and how Canada and France helped block U.S. expansion into Greenland permanently. If you value deep, clear analysis like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Now, let's break down how this moment reshaped Arctic geopolitics forever. Mary Simon's presence in Greenland was not accidental. It was the message. Mary Simon is indigenous. She was born in Kangiqsualujjuaq, grew up in Nunavik in northern Quebec, speaks Inuktitut, and understands Arctic life not as a theory, but as lived experience. Today, she is Canada's Governor-General, the highest representative of the Canadian state, and she chose to go to Greenland personally. She did not send a diplomat. She did not delegate the moment. She traveled herself and brought Inuit leaders with her. That decision transformed this event from routine diplomacy into something far deeper: indigenous solidarity against modern colonial pressure. Days before the consulate opening, speaking at the Arctic Frontiers Conference in Norway, Simon made Canada's position unmistakably clear. She said, "Canada stands firmly in support of the people of Greenland who will determine their own future. Another country should not interfere in a sovereign state." Those were not just words. She proved them with action. She flew to Greenland, she raised the Canadian flag, she opened the consulate, and she stood publicly with Greenlanders while the United States was threatening them. Everything Trump tried to stop happened anyway. Canada and Greenland are not distant partners. They share the longest maritime border in the world, stretching thousands of kilometers across Arctic waters. Inuit communities live on both sides, sharing language, family ties, and cultural traditions that go back centuries. Trade routes, relationships, and kinship existed long before modern borders were drawn. The capital of Canada's Nunavut territory, Iqaluit, is just an hour flight from Nuuk. It is closer than many Canadian cities are to each other. This relationship is not abstract diplomacy, it is daily reality. That reality was reflected in who traveled with Simon. Natan Obed, president of Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, the organization representing Inuit across Canada, was part of the delegation. He captured the fear and clarity spreading across Arctic communities when Trump's threats began. Obed said, "For many in the Arctic, it was hard not to see the threats looming over Greenland as a sign of what was to come. We understand we are increasingly at the center of a geopolitical fight that is not necessarily about our culture or society, but about our homeland, in our backyards." That is the perspective Trump ignored. The Arctic is not an empty strategic map waiting to be claimed. It is not used space. It is home. People live there. They have lived there for thousands of years, long before European colonization, long before American expansion, long before real estate logic was applied to geopolitics. Inuit communities are watching powerful countries argue over their land while pretending indigenous people do not exist. Mary Simon and Natan Obed made them impossible to ignore. France did the same, deliberately. In Nuuk, France's new Consul General, Jean-Noël Barrot, told reporters, "It is a question of solidarity. Just like when you need friends, you turn around and see who is there, and we are there, as the French. It is not against, it is with." The diplomatic language was careful, but the meaning was crystal clear. France was standing with Greenland and Denmark, not remaining neutral, not watching from the sidelines, but actively opposing American pressure. French President Emmanuel Macron had announced plans for the consulate months earlier during a visit to Greenland. Even then, he openly criticized any idea of territorial claims and expressed Europe's solidarity with Greenland. But opening the consulate at this exact moment, when Trump's threats were at their peak, was a conscious decision. France could have delayed. They could have cited security concerns. They could have waited for tensions to cool. They could have avoided appearing to challenge a NATO ally. They did none of that. Instead, they opened the consulate while Trump demanded European support, while he threatened tariffs, while pressure was highest. The timing sent an unmistakable message. Greenland is not alone. Indigenous peoples will be seen, and annexation, by threat or force, will be resisted. France made its position unmistakable. France will not be intimidated. France will not abandon Denmark, and France will not accept the annexation of Allied territory, even under the threat of economic punishment from the United States. In an official statement, the French Foreign Ministry reaffirmed its full commitment to respecting the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark. This was not a minor voice. France is a nuclear power, a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, a founding member of NATO, and one of Europe's most powerful military and economic states. When France speaks, the world listens. That position sent several messages at once. It told European countries they could oppose Trump without facing isolation. It told Greenland they had powerful allies willing to stand firm. And it told Trump something critical. Threats create unity, not submission. French ambassador to Denmark, Christophe Parisot, made the intent even clearer. He explained that the consulate in Nuuk was not just a symbol, but something very concrete to show cooperation and alliance. This was about real commitments, permanent staff, a permanent budget, and a permanent diplomatic presence linking France, Denmark, and Greenland. France was investing in a long-term relationship with Greenland, regardless of American pressure or threats. It was also about building an alternative to exclusive U.S. influence in the Arctic. But diplomacy was only part of the story. What truly changed everything happened in the streets of Nuuk. Greenland's total population is just 57,000 people, yet thousands marched, nearly a quarter of the capital's residents, walking from downtown Nuuk to the U.S. consulate in freezing Arctic temperatures. They carried signs, waved flags, and chanted again and again, "Greenland is not for sale." The main chant echoed in Greenlandic, "Kalalit Nunat is not for sale." Prime Minister Mute Borup Egede led the march himself and addressed the crowd outside the American consulate. The response was thunderous applause. Civil servant Naya Holm explained why she was there. "I came because it is important to show Greenland is not for sale. It is not a toy. This is our home." Then came the image that traveled around the world. Protesters wore red hats reading, "Make America Go Away," a sharp parody of Trump's MAGA slogan. The hats went viral. They sold out repeatedly. Protesters wore them not only in Nuuk, but in Copenhagen, where thousands marched to the U.S. Embassy, and in Iqaluit, Canada, where people demonstrated in solidarity. The red hats became a global symbol of resistance. One image stood out above all others. Marie Peterson brought her 9-year-old daughter, Alaska, to the protest. The child held a handmade sign reading, "Greenland is not for sale." Peterson explained why. "It's important to show children that they are allowed to speak up when they are being bullied by another country." That photograph spread worldwide. A child defending her homeland against a U.S. president threatening invasion. Meanwhile, Trump escalated. As protesters stood outside the U.S. consulate, Trump announced new tariffs. Malik Durup Sheldarup, just 21 years old, was there when the news broke. He said, "I thought this day couldn't get any worse, but it just did. It shows he has no remorse for any kind of human being." Trump was threatening Europe economically, while Greenlanders were protesting peacefully outside his consulate. The world was watching. Then, something unprecedented happened. Every political party in Greenland's parliament issued a joint statement. Conservative parties, liberal parties, independent supporters, defenders of the status quo, all of them signed. It had never happened before. The statement was clear and absolute. We do not want to become part of the United States. We do not want to be Americans. No ambiguity, no hedging. Prime Minister Egede later summarized the choice plainly. When faced with a choice between the United States and Denmark, Greenland chooses Denmark. That was the final answer. France stood firm. Canada stood firm. Greenland stood united. And Trump's threats, meant to intimidate, ended up doing the opposite. They unified allies, empowered indigenous voices, and permanently closed the door on American annexation.
This matters because Trump didn't just fail to take Greenland, he reshaped Greenland's future in the opposite direction. Before Trump's threats, Greenland's politics were moving toward independence. Prime Minister Mute Borup Egede and others had campaigned openly on the idea that Greenland would one day separate from Denmark and become a fully sovereign state. That debate was real, active, and gaining momentum. Trump changed everything. By threatening annexation, if force necessary, he made independence look dangerous. Independence suddenly meant vulnerability. It meant standing alone against a superpower willing to use economic pressure or military threats. So the debate paused. Staying with Denmark became a defense strategy, not a surrender of ambition. As former Greenlandic parliamentarian Tilly Martin-Knudsen explained, the U.S. approach completely destroyed trust. They started out presenting themselves as our friends and allies, saying they wanted to make Greenland better than Denmark ever could, and then they simply began threatening us. That shift shattered American soft power in Greenland. The United States could have invested. It could have partnered. It could have built long-term trust. Instead, Trump threatened military force and permanently lost support. Greenland responded immediately. Its parliament passed legislation banning foreign political funding, a direct response to fears of U.S. interference. The law was designed to stop Washington from buying influence, funding pro-annexation groups, or manipulating the independence movement. This was not theoretical. Trump repeatedly refused to rule out military force, publicly stating that invading a NATO ally was an option. Then came the tariffs, 10% starting in February, rising to 25% by June, imposed on 8 countries unless Denmark surrendered Greenland. Those countries were Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland, every one of them NATO members. Trump's logic was blunt. Europe participated in joint Arctic military exercises. Europe opposed annexation, therefore Europe deserved punishment. He even sent a letter to Norway's prime minister stating he no longer felt bound to think purely in terms of peace, citing the fact that he had not received a Nobel Prize. The message was shared with world leaders. Trump wanted everyone to know the United States would take Greenland one way or another. Then came Davos. Trump met NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, announced a mysterious framework deal, declared victory on social media, and claimed the crisis was resolved. The details were secret. No one knew what the framework actually contained. But something very clear happened immediately afterward. The tariff threats vanished. No 10% in February, no 25% in June, no announcement, no explanation. That was not victory. That was retreat. The framework gave Trump political cover to walk back his threats without admitting defeat. A working group was formed between the United States, Denmark, and Greenland to discuss Arctic security. Working groups are what diplomats create when no agreement is possible. They study issues, they delay decisions, they allow everyone to save face. Meanwhile, everything Trump tried to prevent happened anyway. Canada opened a permanent consulate. France opened a permanent consulate. Greenland's parliament unanimously rejected U.S. control. Denmark reaffirmed sovereignty. European troops deployed. NATO began preparing an Arctic Sentry mission, modeled on Baltic Sentry, explicitly designed to strengthen Arctic defense. This was unprecedented. NATO preparing to defend a member state from another member's annexation attempts. Denmark deployed hundreds of elite Arctic-trained soldiers. The chief of the Royal Danish Army personally oversaw the deployment. These were not symbolic rotations. They were semi-permanent forces planned for 1 to 2 years. European allies joined military exercises. Norway, Sweden, Finland, Germany. Everyone showing unity and sending the same message. You cannot divide NATO by threatening its members. You only unite it against yourself. As Arctic expert Ulrich Prom-God explained, opening consulates transformed the issue. It made Trump's aggression against Greenland and Denmark a European problem, not a bilateral one. That completely changed the dynamics. Security analyst Christine Nissen added that the consequences were no longer just Danish, but European and global. Each consulate made annexation harder. Each permanent mission became a barrier. As University of Greenland scholar Bertil Peterson noted, NATO support and new diplomatic missions were part of a broader strategy. Military exercises, political statements, and permanent presence, all designed to make American annexation impossible without destroying NATO itself. And here's the irony. Greenland has rare earth minerals worth trillions, critical for defense systems, electronics, and renewable energy. China dominates supply. Greenland offers a strategic alternative. Denmark was already cooperating. American companies could invest legally under Danish sovereignty. No annexation was needed. Partnership would have worked.
But Trump believed ownership required conquest, so he threatened and lost everything. His threats paused Greenland's independence movement, not because independence was rejected, but because independence under American pressure was too risky. Staying with Denmark became protection. That shift is Trump's responsibility. Canada and France didn't send temporary missions. They established permanent consulates with staff, budgets, and long-term commitments. More countries are preparing to follow. NATO is strengthening Arctic defenses. Denmark is entrenching military protection. These are permanent changes. Greenlanders are unified across parties, generations, and ideologies. Make America Go Away became a symbol everywhere. Trust is broken for a generation. You cannot rebuild credibility after threatening military force against a people. Trump wanted Greenland. He got protests. He wanted European support. He got unified opposition. He wanted to divide NATO. He strengthened it. He wanted to intimidate Denmark. He reinforced Danish sovereignty. The moment Canada and France raised their flags in Nuuk on the same day was perfect symbolism. Two allies, two permanent missions, one united rejection of annexation. Trump backed down quietly. The framework meant nothing. The consequences remain permanent. Greenland became the place where threatening allies proved its ultimate lesson. Force does not create loyalty. It creates resistance.